The morning sun was merciless, pouring its heat down upon the cracked sidewalks of Brooksville, a town where opportunity felt like a distant rumor. On that blistering summer day, a man named Cale Mercer, 35 years old, tall but gaunt from too many skipped meals, walked with blistered feet, determination etched into every line of his tired face. His shoes were worn so thin that the soles flapped against the pavement, but he didn't stop. 10 miles stretched before him like an endless trial, but for Cale it wasn't just a walk. It was a march for survival, a desperate journey to prove to the world, and to his little daughter, that he hadn't given up on life. Before I take you deeper into this story of hope, resilience, and kindness, I want to pause for a moment. If you believe that second chances matter, if you believe that kindness can change lives, then please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Together we can spread stories that remind the world that even in its harshest moments, humanity still shines. Cale hadn't always lived on the edge of collapse. Years ago, he'd worked as a carpenter, building furniture with his own hands. He loved the feel of wood beneath his palms, the smell of fresh pine, the pride in crafting something that lasted. But when his wife Mara passed away after a sudden illness, his life fell apart. He was left with their daughter, 6-year-old Alina, who became his only reason to keep breathing. Bills piled up, work opportunities dried up, and soon he was behind on rent. Their landlord had been patient at first, but patience turned into threats. Cale sold his tools, pawned their television, and stretched every dollar until nothing was left to stretch. By the time the job posting appeared at Hartwell Industries, a position for a warehouse supervisor, Cale knew it was his last shot at keeping a roof over their heads. The interview was scheduled for 10 in the morning across town. Without bus fare and with no friends left to call on, Cale woke at 4 a.m. and began his walk. He carried Alina's photo in his pocket and her tiny purple hair ribbon tied around his wrist, a reminder that every step was for her. His body screamed in protest as he trudged past shuttered shops, graffiti-marked walls, and the jeering laughter of strangers who noticed his ragged clothes. Sweat soaked his shirt, and his legs trembled with exhaustion, but he pressed on, whispering his daughter's name under his breath like a prayer. At the sleek glass headquarters of Hartwell Industries, another story was unfolding. The CEO, a sharp-eyed woman named Catriona Vale, sat in her office high above the city streets. Known for her no-nonsense leadership and uncanny ability to read people, she often arrived early, sipping her black coffee while scanning reports. That morning, her gaze drifted out the window. She noticed a lone figure struggling along the sidewalk far below, a man whose steps looked more like a battle than a commute. Something about his wary determination caught her attention. She watched for several minutes, intrigued, as he stopped briefly to catch his breath before forcing himself forward again. Unbeknownst to Cale, his interview had already begun, not across the desk, but from the very window above him. By the time he reached the lobby, his shirt clung to him like a second skin, and his hands shook with fatigue. The receptionist eyed him skeptically, as if wondering if he'd wandered into the wrong place. Yet Cale stood tall, his back straight despite the pain. When his name was called, he entered the conference room where 3 executives sat in neat suits. They asked their questions about logistics, management, handling pressure. Though Cale's voice trembled at first, he answered with honesty and conviction. He spoke about his years of experience, about solving problems with limited resources, about never leaving work undone. What he didn't say, but what echoed in every word, was the weight of responsibility he carried for his daughter. As he spoke, Catriona Vale slipped quietly into the back of the room. She said nothing, only watched. She noticed the blisters on his hands, the dirt clinging to his shoes, the deep exhaustion in his eyes. Yet she also noticed the spark, the grit, the refusal to bow. To her, that spoke louder than any summé. The interview ended and Cale shook hands with the panel. He left the building with no promises, only a fragile hope. His legs were so weak he nearly stumbled on the stairs, but he managed to push himself outside. He began the long walk home, each step heavier than the last. He thought of Alina waiting for him, probably sitting by the window with her doll, asking if Daddy would bring good news. Tears burned his eyes at the thought of letting her down. Inside the building, silence lingered until Catriona spoke. "Do any of you realize that man walked here? 10 miles by the look of him. He didn't give up. That's what I call commitment." Her words stunned the others. She made her decision then and there. That evening, as Kale reached the worn-out apartment complex he called home, he found Alina waiting on the steps, her small face lighting up with joy at the sight of him. He hugged her tightly, inhaling the sweetness of her hair, wishing he could promise her a better tomorrow. Then his phone buzzed, a number he didn't recognize. Hesitant, he answered. The voice on the other end introduced herself. "Mr. Mercer, this is Catriona Vale from Hartwell Industries. I wanted to speak to you directly." Cal's heart nearly stopped. She went on, "You walked 10 miles today for a chance. I admire that. I believe we need people like you. Congratulations, the position is yours." Kiel dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by emotion, while Alina clapped her hands in delight. He could barely find the words to thank her, his voice cracking under the weight of relief and gratitude. For the first time in years, he felt the heavy chains of despair loosen. Over the next weeks, Kyle transformed. With a steady paycheck, he caught up on rent, bought new shoes, and filled their small fridge with food. Alina started school with a brand new backpack, proudly telling her classmates that her daddy had the best job in the world. Kale worked tirelessly, earning respect from his co-workers not just for his dedication, but for his kindness. He never forgot what it felt like to be at rock bottom, so he treated everyone with compassion, no matter their role. Catriona kept a watchful eye, quietly proud of her decision. She often recalled the sight of him on the street, a lone man walking against the odds. It reminded her why she valued people over profits, resilience over polished appearances. One day she invited Kale to her office. Standing at that same window where she had first seen him, she asked him to look down at the city streets. "Do you see that corner?" she said. "That's where I first noticed you. You weren't defeated. You were fighting. That's the kind of spirit this company needs." Tears filled Kale's eyes as he realized how much that one moment had changed his life forever. And so, the story of a single father who walked 10 miles didn't end with exhaustion on a sidewalk. It bloomed into a new beginning, a second chance gifted by resilience and kindness. His journey proved that sometimes the hardest roads lead us exactly where we're meant to be, and that there are still leaders in this world who see past appearances and choose humanity. If this story has touched your heart today, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your engagement helps us continue bringing real and inspiring stories to people who need hope. And before we close, here's a special request. Drop a comment below sharing what kindness or second chance in your life made the biggest difference. We'd love to hear your story too, because in the end, kindness is the bridge that carries us all forward, and Kyle's walk reminds us that no step is ever wasted when it's taken with love.